Okay, welcome to another episode of the Joe Dunnrite Show. Today we're going to talk about the Winchester 308 cartridge, and it's one of my favorite rounds. I love it over just about any other round out there. We could get into a debate about it. It's a short action cartridge. The military uses essentially that round. The 7.62 is the 308. And it's just a great all-around round. There's not one game animal in the continental United States, well, at least not in North America, but in the U.S., that you can't hunt successfully and ethically with a 308. Given good sportsmanship, and we'll talk a little bit about sportsmanships and long shots and things like that. I'm not an advocate for that, and if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see that I'm pretty tough on those people who think it's okay to shoot an animal at 960 yards. But I love the 308, and so I've been reloading this cartridge for over 40 years. And when I first started loading this, I was loading a 150 grain Sierra Spitzer bullet, and it was a nice bullet. It was adequate for the deer hunts, but not highly accurate. Then I moved on from that to a 180 grain Remington Corelock, which is a little bit more accurate, but definitely has more knockdown power. We're going to talk about ballistics here in a few minutes. Then I moved on to the Barnes TSX bullet. And the reason I moved on to that bullet at the time, and this is a 150 grain bullet, was because the Game and Fish Department had given the junior hunters a couple free boxes because they were trying to get away from lead bullets. This bullet is a full copper bullet, so you don't have worry issues about lead poisoning. They were having issues with condors up in northern Arizona, eating the gut piles of the deer shot in the kaibab, and then the condors were dying of lead poisoning. But the problem I have with the TSX is it just doesn't expand well for a bullet. And my son, I won't go into too much detail. I talked a little bit about this, but both of my boys have shot. Let's see, we've taken a total of 4 elk with the TSX, and every one of them, it did not knock that bull down. My son shot a really, really nice 300 plus 6x6 at 90 yards, and both the bullets went right through the both lungs, and it was a pencil-size hole in and a pencil-size hole out. So not even as deadly as an archery shot. So anyway, when I called Barnes and I questioned them, they said, well, it's because your bullets aren't going fast enough. And because they don't go fast enough, they don't expand properly. So essentially what was happening is the bullet was just going straight through. So I decided I was going to get away from that bullet, and that's what I did this year. So this year I switched over to the Hornady ELD-X. And I will tell you, this bullet is amazing. It's a 178 grain bullet, 30 caliber. It's got a tip on it. It's a tipped bullet. And my son shot a bull elk this year with this cartridge, and it went 2 feet. It went 2 feet straight down. That bull, it just knocked it dead instantly. And the entry and exit wounds were more normal with a bullet that would expand. And it completely took all of its energy inside that bull. So anyway, I love the bullet. I love the round. So let's talk a little bit about what I load with. So I've been using IMR 4064 powder for over 40 years. And I don't get paid anything by any of these guys for any of this discussion. This is all just knowledge I want to share with you. I don't get any special perks or anything, I wish. But the IMR 4064 is probably one of the best powders they make. It's very stable. It's impossible to get a hold of right now. If you can find it, let me know where, and I'll go get some. I'd love to get my hands on a couple pounds, and it's because of the whole situation with reloading components between powder and with primers. So what I load is just a standard 200 size large rifle primer. I've used Winchester and I've used CCI primers. I have good experience with both. I wouldn't pick one over the other. They both do an adequate job. But for the 150 grain rounds, I've been loading 44 grains of this. And for the 178 or 180 grain rounds, I load 42 grains. And you might say, okay, why 42 and 44? Why not 44.2 or 44.6? So I'm a hunter. And I'm looking for accuracy, but I'm not looking for target accuracy, like, punching dimes at 100 yards. So what I found is that these rounds are very stable. And I will tell you that this particular round, the ELD cartridge, 178 grain, it will punch a 3/4 group at 100 yards on a bench with a decent firearm and a decent scope with a decent set of rings. And we'll talk about that maybe in another episode about scopes and scope rings and scope mounting, and why it's important that you spend a decent amount on your optics and the bases that hold the scope rings on. If you run out and buy $1,000 firearm and put a $30 scope on it, you might as well just have bought a $200 rifle. But we'll talk about that again later. But again, really good luck with the IMR 4064 powder. But I want to talk a little bit about 180 grain bullet. Well, this is 178 and 180 grain for the Remington Core-Lokt, which, by the way, is a very, very good round. We've had very good luck with the Remington Core-Lokts, but I would definitely pick the ELD-X over that. And so you might say, well, I like 150 grain bullet for deer, and I like 180 grain bullet for elk. Well, I will tell you, when you look at the ballistics, and that's going to be hard for you to see here, but let me talk to it. What I do with my firearm, and I'm shooting a Winchester Model 70 Extreme Tungsten. It's a new rifle that just came out. I love it. It kind of takes the best of the Winchester Model 70 Extreme Tungsten takes the best of the old school featherweights with the claw extractor and the controlled feed, and it kind of jazzes it up with a fluted barrel and a muzzle brake and a really nice Bell & Carlton composite stock. But anyway, I have a Vortex Viper 4-12 scope on that. And what I do is I sight that rifle in with these 178 grains and all my firearms. I sight them in to be 1 inch high at 100 yards. And with that particular round with 42 grains, the 178 grain ELD, 1 inch high at 100 yards, is about a little over 2 inches, about 2.3 inches low. I'm sorry, let me get my data for you. It's about 2.6 inches low at 200, 13 inches low at 300, and 32 inches low at 400. So we'll talk about long range shots. That's why you need to understand that, after 400 yards, that bullet is heading for dirt. So what do you do to shoot an animal at 1,000 yards? Well, you have to have a scope that you can adjust the elevation on. And I will tell you, at 500 yards, the 308, and this is not just this 308, but it's most 308s, are at 60 inches low. That's 5 feet low at 500 yards. So the reason I don't like long shots over, I'd say 300 is about the farthest I would really want to shoot ethically at an animal, is because a lot can happen in that time frame. With the windage, and I know a lot of you will criticize me and say that's crazy, but the windage, the animal could take a step, and we talked about that with archery shots, the knucklehead 80-yard shot. But the bottom line is, I will tell you that when you start looking at these rounds and shot placement, 300 yards is pretty far. Now, the Vortex Viper has a BDC reticle on it that's really nice. If you sight your gun in at 100, and again, I'm a 1 inch high at 100, the first hash mark down below is 200, and the second hash is 3, the third is 4, and then the top of the post is 500 yards, and it falls right in line with what Vortex says on these different trajectory numbers. And so with the particular cartridges I'm using, the difference between 180 grain and 150 grain, the numbers aren't really changing that much until you get out to about 500 yards. At 500 yards, actually, the 150 grain bullet is dropped 10 inches farther. And you say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why is that? The bullet's traveling faster. Well, it's because of mass and energy. So when this 178 grain ELD leaves the barrel, it's got about 2,600 foot-pounds of energy. And foot-pounds of energy is what you want to knock down an animal. It's the same with a bow. It's the same with a bullet. But what happens is, because it's actually traveling about 200 feet per second slower than 150 grain, but it carries its momentum much farther. So out at 300 yards, the 150 grain bullet only has 1,500 foot-pounds, but the 178 has 1,740. So it's carrying more momentum farther out. So I would recommend, and what I'm going to start doing is hunting all my animals, all my big game animals, with 178 grain bullet, 178 grain ELD-X, deer, and elk, and anything else large. Now, you might say, well, 150 goes faster, blah, blah, blah. But if you really get online with a ballistic calculator, run the numbers, you're going to realize the little added speed you get out of that really doesn't buy you that much. And it actually hurts you at the longer distances. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share with you. Again, I really am all about the hunt, about ethical and responsible hunting. I really don't think there's any reason for any ethical hunter to take a shot over 300 yards. You might stretch it out to 400 if the conditions are perfect, but certainly not a Jimmy John's 960-yard shot. Everybody's really wild now about this 6.5 Creedmoor round that's out there, and I will tell you that's a fad. That round will come and go. Everybody likes it because companies like Gunworks are charging $10,000 for a custom-made firearm. But I will tell you, the Creedmoor, if you're going to go out and buy a new rifle today, and you want just a basic all-around caliber to hunt, I would stick with the 308. I mean, you can go with a 243 for deer, or you could go with a 7mm 08, but there's lots of variations. A 243 and a 7mm 08 are variations off of the 308. I would just stick with the 308. The 30 caliber round does a great job. And again, focus on the hunt, not on the shoot. And really, that's all I have. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Thanks for joining the Joe Dunnrite Show, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.